And are Americans feeling buyer's remorse about President Obama? Take a look at the latest CBS News New York Times poll. It shows 59% of Americans are disappointed in the Obama presidency. 59%. And it's not just Republicans. A big chunk of that disappointment coming from independents and Democrats. Joining us, Charles Krauthammer, author of Things That Matter. He has been on the New York Times bestseller list for nearly 18 weeks. So if you haven't read it, you better go out and read it, or you're just not going to know what everybody else knows. All right, nice to see you. Nice to see you, Charles.
Good to see you. And can I apply for the internship?
You can. You can. So do you like my idea?
Absolutely.
Oh, good. Well, I like your book. You like my one-page job spiel.
We're partners.
We're partners indeed, in crime maybe. All right. Why is there some buyer's remorse, even from Democrats and, Republicans?
Look, Obama has been presiding over the weakest recovery since the Second World War. It's amazing his numbers are as high as they are, over 40% still. And I think it's because people have sort of an affection for him as a person. The other part of it is Obamacare. Obamacare, up until now, for the 4 years that we've been debating this, was abstract, theoretical. Well, now it hits home. All those stories that Senator Johnson was reading from, people are getting hurt.
Well, Senator Harry Reid says those are untrue,
exactly.
are made up.
I can't understand why Harry Reid would say something that he is saying is so obviously false. And it isn't as if it's hard to prove that it's false. Thousands and thousands of letters and emails. But here's what's happening. It's hitting Democrats. It's hitting independents who are losing their insurance, losing their doctor. So I think it has this wide, broad effect. It's like you're throwing darts at a board. It's not that people are upset about a policy, but if it hits you and your family, it's going to hurt you. And that's why the bleeding is happening among independents and also among Democrats.
One of the other areas where his numbers are sagging is in foreign policy. We have this Russian ship that is now in Havana, in a Cuban harbor. Is there any possibility that we are going back into a Cold War or not?
If you're for Putin, the dictator of Russia, we never left the Cold War. Remember who the guy is. He was a KGB agent in East Germany, of all places, in Soviet days. He has destroyed completely the democracy he inherited. So it's now a dictatorship. He's got stability like the Tsar had stability. And he has said publicly that the greatest calamity of the 20th century was the collapse of the Soviet Union, Soviet Empire, and he wants it back. And Ukraine is part of that empire. And that, I think, is why he's had all the saber rattling. It was amusing that the head of NATO today said that the mobilization of the army that Putin has ordered on the borders of the Ukraine has nothing to do with Ukraine. I mean, who are we kidding here? Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union. Putin wants it back. All
right. When I think the ship in the Havana harbor, for some reason, to me, that was a real eye-opener, among other things going on. Is there anything that Putin has done that mitigates in the other direction, that we're not going towards a Cold War, and that perhaps that those that think we are might just be alarmists? Is there anything that he's done that mitigates in the other direction?
The only difference is that in the Cold War, it was two items at once. It was a geopolitical struggle over territory and power, a traditional one between Russia and America. But it was also ideological about capitalism and communism. Nobody, even a Putin, believes in communism anymore. So this is more of like a 19th century struggle. Look, in 300 years since after Peter the Great, Russia expanded by a Belgium every year for 300 years. And then comes the collapse. And Putin is a guy who says this is against the natural order of things. Russia is great. I will make it great again. But it has to start with Ukraine, because that is an element of the Russian Empire. If he has Ukraine, he can have an empire. If he doesn't, he'll never have an empire. And that's why he's rattling his sabers, why the bear is on the prowl.
And President Obama is handling this how?
Passively. Mute. What has he said? There's nothing they have said. I would like to see some recognition of the stakes here. We have offered $1 billion of aid, which is the right way to go. But if the Russians are going to be crude, and Putin is crude, he's a bully, he's a thug, he's a KGB agent. If he applies raw pressure, military pressure, then at least the West has to stand up and say, we're going to put a flotilla in the Black Sea. We're not going to allow this to happen. Or we're going to help the Ukrainians in Kiev to say that this cannot happen. Economic aid and a presence in the area to say you can't walk over a sovereign Ukraine.
Charles, always nice to see you. Thanks, sir.
Pleasure.